Welcome back to Silverstone, everybody, for some more Radical Challenge Championship action, also involving the Radical SR1 Cup here over the course of this weekend. If you didn't join us for the first of the races that we saw earlier on today, then you missed out on what were mixed conditions at the time, which certainly affected the outcome of the race. Some cars, some drivers, some teams had decided to opt for a slightly more conservative setup towards wet conditions, which perhaps even included bolting on the wet controlled Hankook tyres to the cars, as well as stiffening up the suspension, or softening up the suspension and what have you, whereas other teams opted for sure for a setup that was more towards dry conditions. So as the weather moved in and out over the course of the race, we saw some cars head up through the order to then ultimately drop back down through the order. It was a really, really intriguing race, but we did see James Sweetnam come through to claim his first win of the season in what was round 9 of the Radical Challenge Championship, and we also saw come through to claim the win in the SR1 Cup, James Lay, for his third win of the season, his third consecutive win of the season as well. And whilst I haven't done the maths, I certainly think now, as a result of that win, James Lay will have taken up the lead of the Radical SR1 Cup overall, because Will Hunt, his main championship rival, unfortunately retired. So that is probably now going to mean that it is James Lay who will be leading the championship standings. There's just a little bit of clearing up being done from one of the support races here at Silverstone, and then we will see the cars heading out onto track. Now, the grid for this second race of the weekend is based on the second fastest times that were set in qualifying. And again, that qualifying session this morning was a little bit damp, to say the least, as the cars came out onto the circuit. It actually started getting quite heavy, the rain. All still more of a fine droplets of rain, but it did start to mean that for the first time we started to see a little bit of spray going up on the circuit. But however, it did dry, still a warm ambient temperature here at Silverstone, and therefore in the qualifying session this morning the weather did dry up a little bit, which meant that we ended up with largely everybody where we thought they would be on the grid. Now, the race earlier on today, we saw that win for James Sweetnam, his first of the season. Second, Mark Richards, who was one of the drivers who worked his way beautifully well up through the order. And third in the race earlier on today was the championship leader, which is Matt Bell, at the wheel of his number 44 car. John McLeod came through to finish in fourth place. He was also the winner of the Fangio Trophy as well for the slightly older drivers in the field. Fifth in the race overall was Elliot Goodman, and Jerome DeSadlia, who lay second in the championship standings, only could just finish in sixth position. In the Radical SR1 Cups, we mentioned that the win went the way of James Lay, but he wasn't leading all of the way. Nick Sapolsky, the man from Appley Edge, finished in second place, but he had been leading the Radical SR1 Cup charge for a period of time. And third in the Radical SR1 Cup, just to give you that, was Andy Lowe, who secured his first podium of the season in the SR1 Cup. So well done to Andy for his first podium of the season. So we're just awaiting the cars to work their way out onto circuits. The first time this season, at least, that we've had the Radical Challenge Championship combined with the Radical SR1 Cup. And whilst the Radical Challenge Championship caters for different types of radicals, whether it be the likes of the Radical SR3 or the Radical SR8, the SR10 is eligible, the RX Coupe is eligible. It's all, I think, SR3s that we've got here this weekend in the Radical Challenge Championship. So those are 1500cc Suzuki engined cars, producing about 225 brake horsepower, and topping out around, certainly here at Silverstone, down the bottom of the Hangar Straight, they'll be heading towards 150 miles per hour as a top speed, subject to their gearing. And they're not slow either. 0 to 60 is just over 3 seconds in these cars. And, well, with the aerodynamics that they have, it also means that the cornering speeds, particularly through that lovely section of circuit through Maggots and Beckett's and onto the Hangar Straight out of Chapel, they'll certainly be a lot of lateral G that the drivers will be exposed to. Now, the Radical SR1 Cup cars are still Suzuki engine, but it's a smaller engine in those cars. Those are 1340cc engine cars, and they do run on a treaded tyre as well. So the cars, I think, are now making their way out onto the track, and once we see the cars just working their way around onto what will be a rolling start, we should be able to pick up on what the grid will look like for the Radical Challenge Championship, and we'll pick up on certainly who's at the sharp end of the SR1 Cup grid as well for what is for the Radical Challenge Championship, round 10 of their 2021 season. It's round 8 for the SR1 Cups, because I say they do usually race separately, but for this weekend on the Grand Prix circuit, they are all combined together for the race earlier on today, for this race, and for their pit stop race that will be taking place tomorrow as well. So a bit of weaving being done from side to side to try and build the temperature in their control tyres, and then once they continue to weave from side to side and build that temperature, then we can look forward to the start of the race. Let's give you the grid then and the way that the cars will line up for this second race of the day. Pole position goes the way of Jerome de Sadlier, and alongside is Matt Bell. Row 2 of the grid is Mark Richards. He's joined by Chris Preen. The third row of the grid will see John McLeod and Chris Short, with row 4 being comprised by Jason Rishover and Peter Tyler. Row 5 of the grid is the race 1 winner, which is James Sweetnam, and alongside is number 19, ex-Radical SR1 racer, that is Dean Warrener. And row 6 sees the number 28 car of Elliot Goodman line up alongside what will be the number 88 car of Jakob Zelenska. After that, the next rows of the grid I'll just give you without the graphic. It's Peter Brooks on row 7, alongside him is Anthony Ayres. Row 8 sees Rod Goodman line up alongside Andrew Gord. Row 9 is Wesley Fongini and Guillaume Gruchet. Row 10 is Andrew Greenland and Stephen Lake. And row 11 is British GT racer Martin Plowman, who is taking part in this race, having taken over the car that Mike Chen drove in the race earlier on today. Row 12 will be empty, because row 13 is where we start to see the first of the Radical SR1. So inside of row 13, pole position in reality for the SR1 Cup is Mackenzie Walker. Alongside him is the race winner from earlier on today, James Lay. Row 2 for the SR1 Cup will be Will Hunt, alongside number 4, which is Ben Stone. Row 3 for the SR1 Cup is Mark Williams and Daryl De Leon, who made his debut in the series earlier on and finished just off the podium in 4th place, if memory serves me correctly. Row 4 is Fraser McFadden and Nick Sapolsky. Row 5 is Sven Thompson and Andy Lowe, first time onto the podium earlier on today. Row 6 is James Hadley and Alex Spooner. Row 7 is Paul Atherton and Drew Stern. And the final row for the Radical SR1 Cups, starting in what will be 36th position on the grid, is going to be car number 36, conveniently enough, which is Simon Parker. Well, in contrast to the changeable conditions that they had for their race earlier on today, whilst it's still cloudy here at Silverstone, the sun is now shining, the track is perfectly dry, and we are perhaps going to have a less, well, fraught wasn't the word really, a less dramatic race with, as I said earlier on, some laps cars were working their way up through the order. The next lap round the conditions had changed and those cars were then struggling and they dropped back down through the order. So it really was an unusual race. It was never wet, it was never dry, it just kept changing from lap to lap and corner to corner. But as we say, that certainly helped James Sweetnam secure what for him was his first victory this season in the Radical Challenge Championship. I think it was his first ever victory in the Radical Challenge Championship, and he did that from 7th on the grid. If he wants to try and make it back-to-back wins, well, he's got to do it on this one from 9th position on the grid, so we'll have to wait and see. So Jerome de Sadlier, the white car with the red flashes to it, sits there on pole position. He was the Radical SR1 Cup champion back in 2017. He was 3rd in this Radical Challenge Championship in 2018. He was runner-up in 2019. He's got returnee to Radical Racing, Matt Bell, lining up alongside him. Matt is the championship leader. He finished in 3rd position earlier on today, which further strengthens his lead at the sharp end of the championship, because, as we say, the pole sitter, Jerome de Sadlier, could only muster 6th position, so the lead advantage growing a little bit more. So here come the leaders of the Radical SR1. It's the black and the red car of Mackenzie Walker we need to watch out for in the Radical SR1 Cup, alongside the white and the Dayglow green car of James Lay. But 20 minutes are on the clock. We are about to get the Radical race underway. Neat 2x2 order. The lights go out and they charge their way up towards Copse Corner for the first time. And as they turn their way through Copse Corner, Matt Bell is not quite going to brave it out around the outside of Jerome de Sadlier. So Jerome de Sadlier, I think, will hang on to the lead of the race as the Radical Challenge competitors exit Copse Corner, and the SR1s now do the same. They are just 5 or 10 seconds down the road, having left a bit of a gap between the two of them. There's already one of the SR3s is struggling a little bit there. We'll have to work out. I think that might be Anthony Ayres maybe that's had an issue in the early stages and has already dropped his way down through the order. For the SR1 Cup in the early stages, James Lay has taken up the lead, but it is Jerome de Sadlier that leads the race overall. Matt Bell in 2nd position. It's going to be the black car of Chris Short that's there in 3rd position. 4th at the moment just turning its way through there in 4th place. We'll have to pick up, I think that's Chris Preen who's there in 4th place, who made a small mistake on the formation lap earlier on as we go side by side for the lead of the race, but Jerome de Sadlier had the inside line as they went in towards Vale, so the Swiss driver hangs on to the lead at this stage. Jason Rishover is there in what is 5th position. I'm afraid Peter Brooks still sits rather patiently in the pit lane with mechanics peering into the engine bay of his Radical SR3, so an enormous shame there for Peter Brooks, a former Radical SR1 Cup competitor. Elliot Goodman chops across the nose of Dean Warrener as they fight for places just outside of the top 10 for the lead of the race. Matt Bell is hugely keen to see whether he can unlock the door to the lead of the race, and Chris Short, I'm afraid, is out of the race as well. That's an enormous shame for Chris Short, who was going so strong in the race earlier on today. He ultimately finished in 7th position, but it's all gone wrong for him in the very early stages of this one with some sort of mechanical issue with his car, which I think is going to be dealt with by our marshals and pushed out of harm's way without too much of a trouble. Now for number 9, Chris Preen, as I mentioned earlier on, he made a mistake on the formation lap earlier on, which damaged the front and the back end of his Radical SR3. He brought it into the pit lane at the end of the formation lap and was out of the race before it even got underway. He's trying to, at the moment, hunt down a podium position by the look of things. So over the start-finish line they'll go. There goes Matt Bell. It's Mark Richards in the black car that's there in 3rd position. Thought it was Chris Short to start with, but it is without question Mark Richards. And there is Andy Ayres. That is the car I did see was going slow at the very start. So Anthony Ayres has not got going any further, really. He's still limping the car around the track. John McLeod must wrap up the top 6 at the moment with the number 14 car. John has been a long-time Radical racer. Best result in recent years was 2015, where he finished 3rd in the championship, but his black and Dayglow green car, you can see, is towards the tail end of this pack, heading up towards Stowe. So leaders go through. There is the car of John McLeod. Dean Warrener is there in 7th position. Elliot Goodman is 8th. The race 1 winner, which is James Sweetnam, is there in 9th place as things currently stand. And completing the top 10 at this stage. I'll try and pick out who that was that was sitting there towards the tail end of the top 10. As for the Radical SR1 Cup competitors, well, it certainly looks as though at the moment Mackenzie Walker is just about doing enough here. James Lay might have got the lead in that category for the first part of a lap, but the number 39 car, the winner of the SR1 Cup race from earlier on, is 2nd at the moment, and he's got cars breathing down his neck as well. Behind him is the number 74 car, that's Guillaume Gruchet, who is in the main Radical Challenge Championship, so even if he gets through and past, then he's not going to take any championship points away. So for number 39, James Lay, he'd be, I would say, best placed just to let the number 74 car go through, take the position away from him, because it doesn't affect his championship points. Oh, contact there. That was, I'm afraid, very late on the brakes. Ben Stone trying to get the inside of James Lay. So Ben Stone will get going. Spinning in sympathy was Sven Thompson, who is a regular team owner in the Radical Challenge Championship for a number of years, but good to see him back in the SR1 Cup. Now there's our race 1 winner. That's James Sweetnam, looking to try and get right up onto terms with Elliot Goodman. The two of them very much together. They're fighting for positions outside of the top 6 as things currently stand. So over the start-finish line now we'll go. Now, is James going to be able to do anything at Copse Corner? No, you see a wiggle mid-corner there as the car started to break away, so he had to steer into it. That forces him very wide on the exit of the corner. So that's for something like 8th and 9th positions that they are fighting for currently. But James Sweetnam, race 1 winner, losing a chunk of time there. Just that small little wiggly moment, some mid-corner oversteer that he had no choice but to correct, and then all of a sudden the car's sort of pitching itself wide. For 5th and 6th place the fight is on as well. Jason Rishover under enormous pressure. The black car with its green flashes trying to work its way through, but no real gap for John McLeod. In towards the braking area for the Vale goes Jason Rishover, the number 23 car. Jason, who's been racing Radicals for a good number of years now, finished 3rd in the championship back in 2020. We've also seen him racing prototype cars, P3 cars in the past in the UK. And at the moment, he's just doing enough to keep John McLeod at bay. John, who finished 5th in the championship standings last year. So up towards the braking area for Village. And as soon as you turn through the right-hander at Village, get the car over to the right-hand side of the circuit, because you've got the even tighter left-hander at the loop. And then from there, in these cars, certainly you are flat out through Aintree Corner. The aerodynamics working hard on the cars. As up towards Brooklands come our leading pair. Now Matt Bell, is he going for the lead of the race? He had a very good look there at Jerome de Sadlier. Is he going to be able to take up the lead of the race? Have to wait and see. For Jason Rishover, though, he's still at the moment hanging on to 5th place. This is Dean Warrener, he's there in 7th place. Elliot Goodman will be 8th place. 9th place at the moment is going to be James Sweetenham. And completing the top 10, I think that's Stephen Lake that's there in 10th position, but for the lead it is still Jerome de Sadlier. Despite the very best efforts of Matt Bell, couldn't quite unlock the door to the lead, the championship leader. And Jerome de Sadlier, having seen his opportunity to get closer to Matt Bell in the championship standings earlier on, evaporate slightly. He'll be hugely keen to make sure he outscores him here. Now these are the sprint races, so it's 40 points for a race win. It's 35 points per second, 30 of your third, and so on. There is an extra point for pole position. That has already gone the way of Jerome de Sadlier. There is an extra point for fastest lap. That is currently going the way of Jerome de Sadlier. And of course, he is at the moment on 40 championship points potentially if he stays where he is. So that would just close the gap a little bit, but it is a reasonable gap that Matt Bell has, and as long as he's consistent for the rest of the season, he should be in with a reasonable shout, one would have thought. There goes the leading pair. Back up towards the area of Abbey. So what is the Grand Prix start nowadays? The Hamilton start. We might be on the Grand Prix circuit this weekend, but we're using the Heritage pitch, so Cops Corner is our first corner, and this is still our leader. Is it in what is the Radical SR1 Cup? Let's just have a quick look. That's Nick Zapolsky. No, Nick Zapolsky is not going to be leading it still. He has managed on this lap, though, to get himself ahead of James Lay, who seems to be struggling a little bit at this stage, I would say. So, yeah, Nick Zapolsky is going to let Guillaume Grichet dive up the inside, because that's a Radical SR3, so that's a car that runs in the Radical Challenge Championship. Nick Zapolsky is more focused on what's going on in the SR1 Cup and trying to make sure he keeps James Lay, race 1 winner, behind. Now this is going to be for 3rd and 4th in the SR1 Cup at this stage. Not that far behind them is another car as well. It's going to be 5th in the SR1 Cup. Oh, James Lay, good move there, coming up towards Abbey, which gives him now a run around the outside at Farm, but it gives him the inside line when they break towards Village. So James Lay is going to go through and then needs to watch his mirrors, because Darren De Leon is looking to try and squeeze his way through as well. The young teenager looking to try and make an impression in the Radical SR1 Cup this weekend, and is doing everything right at the moment. I think he first tested the car when he was just 16 years of age. He's only just turned 17 as Darryl De Leon. Down the Wellington straight in towards the braking area for Brooklands, there will go. And the problem is with James Lay, having in the very early stages led the class, he's now down in 3rd, but seems to be struggling a little bit, and at the moment is a bit of a cork in the bottle, isn't he? He's got the number 2 of Darren De Leon sitting behind. Then you've got Nick Sapolsky, the man from Alderley Edge, the ex-Ginetta racer, sitting right there with him. But leading the class is this car here, the black and the red car of Mackenzie Walker. Mackenzie, who's been racing Radical SR1s for a couple of seasons now. Did do some racing in the past in what was the Lotus Cup UK, and is not that far behind some of the cars in the Radical Challenge Championship. As you can see there, Wesley Fongeny was not that far up the road from our Radical SR1 Cup class leader. In towards the braking area for the Vale. That's Stephen Lake, who is under pressure. The car that's sitting behind him, nice and easy one to spot, will be Peter Tyler. Peter is another one of the drivers who has graduated out of the SR1 Cup into the main Radical Challenge Championship. We've got 10 minutes of the race still to go. At the moment, Jerome de Sadlier is not exactly comfortable in the lead of the race. This is going to be for, what, 8th and 9th position. And I think that's a change of order as well, because James Sweetenham was behind Elliot Goodman at the start of the lap. He's now ahead of him, so that has been a change there. So that means that Sweetenham's now up into what will be, well, 8th position. 9th will be the car of race 1 winner, which is James Sweetenham. We also saw that change of order as well, as Darren De Leon managed to get through and ahead of Nick Sapolsky as well. So Darren De Leon can now set his sights about trying to close in on James Lay that lays ahead. Up towards the loop, then from there start to propel the cars. Again, key exit of the corner is the loop. You've got to get on the power nice and early, and then you carry all of that momentum through Aintree and down the straight in towards this corner here. The left-hander at Brooklands, very difficult to try and pick out the apex as you head in towards Brooklands. But Darren de Leon is doing a good job of keeping at bay the certainly more experienced Nick Sapolsky, the number 26 car, just can't find a way through at the moment. So through Lovefield, up towards Woodcote Corner. They will work their way over the start-finish line. So there goes James Lay. Yeah, he's certainly pulling away, isn't he, ever more now from these pair, who seem to have sort of settled in a little bit now into their positions for what will be, what is it, 4th and 5th of the Radical SR1 Cup competitors. Guillaume Gruchet, nice to see Guillaume back in the championship. Not seeing huge amounts of him over the course of the last year or so, but the number 74 car back for this weekend and is running down in 19th position currently. He's eligible for the Fangio Trophy for the slightly older drivers that we have in the field, and is looking to try and close up on the number 21 car ahead, which would be Will Hunt. So that would be 18th and 19th positions, but in reality they're in separate races. The car ahead, the number 21 car, is an SR1 Cup car. Car behind, you can see it's a wider car. It's more aerodynamically efficient, and that's a spin, I'm afraid, for Alex Spooner. That is going to be, I think, the exit of Copse Corner, where he's had a rotation. We'll get going. Now, can Guillaume Gruchet do anything here about trying to sweep his way through and past Will Hunt? He's looking to the inside line as they head up towards Abbey, but Will Hunt will take his usual line, but then runs a little bit wide and onto the tarmac on the exit of it. Mark Williams under pressure as well. He's got the number 40 car, James Hadley, right behind him, as Will Hunt has to pick his moment to come back off the runoff tarmac, back onto the track, and he does it just before James Lay appears in sight. So that has not cost him a position in the Radical SR1 Cup. We've also had the change of a lead as well. Matt Bell now has picked up the lead of the race. You can see from the graphic on the left-hand side of your screen that on the laps that just been completed, it's not Jerome de Sadlier anymore that's at the top of the table. It's Matt Bell, the championship leader, that has managed to get himself ahead. Mark Richards still in third. Chris Preen, John McLeod and Jason Rishover wrap up the top six. There's also been a change for fifth and sixth, because John McLeod's now up into fifth, Jason Rishover down to sixth, and that happened also on the same lap as the lead changed. Drew Stern there at the wheel of the very easy to spot car has got Simon Parker's all black machine sitting behind. We're still working hard with some of the Radical SR3s from the Radical Challenge trying to feed their way through. That being Chris Preen looking to try and work his way back through the order. Chris Preen running what, in fourth position. Hopeful of a podium, I'd have thought, Chris Preen, who was recently appointed the UK sales partner for Radical Sports Cars. Chris, and at the moment, if he finishes in fourth position, that would be jointly his second best result of the season. He's had one podium. That was second place when we were at Snetterton last time out. So we've got just 5.5 minutes remaining. Matt Bell looking to try and make good his escape from Jerome de Sadlier. Jerome de Sadlier still got the fastest lap of the race, though. Hasn't dropped too far behind the race leader as they head on to lap number 8 this time through. So there's still just under 3/4 of a second separating first from second position. But Matt Bell, having finished third in the race earlier on today, would like to get back to winning ways. He won one of the 3 races at Snetterton to start the season. He won 2 of the 3 races at Brands Hatch. He won all three races when we returned to Snetterton for rounds 7, 8 and 9 of the championship, as they head now down the Hanger Straight and in towards the braking area for Stowe Corner. Jerome de Sadlier gaining a little bit more momentum, sitting in the slipstream, the car of the race leader making that hole in the air, which just allows Jerome de Sadlier to close up a little bit. But of course, the closer he gets, the more it then affects his aerodynamics, particularly on the front of the car. Spin again, I'm afraid. That looks like potentially Paul Atherton that's had the spin. No, James Hadley that would be that's had the spin. Well, we are now part of the way around lap number 8. and the gap hasn't really changed. Jerome Desadlier through the first sector of this lap certainly was quicker than Matt Bell. They're into the second sector of the lap now, and I think probably Matt Bell has a slightly bigger advantage than he did at the beginning of it. Around through the loop, up towards Aintree Corner. Matt Bell looking to try and close in on what potentially could be win number 7 of the season, but also conscious that Jerome Desadlier is never that far away. So we're coming up towards the end of the second sector of the lap very shortly, and through the second sector of the lap, yeah, Jerome Desadlier is about 0.2 slower than Matt Bell, so everything he gained at the first part of the lap has sort of disappeared at the second part of the lap. So the gap that was 0.725 of a second as they came over the start-finish line is not going to have varied a great deal at all. So 3.5 minutes remaining. Lap number 8 about to be completed. Over the start-finish line come the leading pair. The gap is down because through the third sector of the lap, the Swiss driver in second place, Jerome Desadlier, has gone quicker than Matt Bell. So now the gap is down to just 0.451 of a second. Further down through the order, Mark Williams at the wheel of his SR1 coming under pressure from Andrew Greenland's car. Again, that's a Radical SR1 fighting away with a Radical Challenge competitor. And that is going to be for places outside of the top 20. I would have thought that one. So, sliding the car, the man from Dalkeith, as he came out of what was Club that time through and onto the Hamilton Straight. Mark Williams at the wheel of the number 18 car. He is, 25th position, which means that Andrew Greenland will be looking to try and see if he can get himself inside the top 25. Now, the Radical SR3, better aerodynamics, a more powerful engine, but for Mark Williams, he's certainly got a few years' experience now driving these Radical SR1s, so he's able to hold back a more powerful car. Mark finished, 5th in the championship back in 2018, I think is his best overall championship finish so far in the SR1 Cup, but he's been a regular member on the grid, competitor on the grid for a good number of years. Now, for the lead of the race, traffic just coming up. James Hadley's car is the car that needs to be dealt with by Matt Bell. But thankfully for Matt Bell, he will meet him just on the exit of Aintree Corner. Might just have to delay getting on the throttle a little bit heading on to the Wellington Straight, and that could be a half an opportunity for Jerome Desadlier. There's more traffic just up the road as well. Next little bit of traffic they're going to meet, I think, is Paul Atherton's car. Yes, it is. Yeah, the blue and orange car, as opposed to the grey and orange car of James Hadley that they've just dealt with. And well, time and opportunities are running out here, really, for Jerome Desadlier. He's got to close the gap. He needs something from somewhere, whether it be from himself, the car, a mistake from Matt Bell, meeting a bit of traffic for the race leader in the wrong position. This is also back to the SR1s, and this is going to be James Lay looking to try and get himself ahead of Will Hunt. So Will Hunt, who had a retirement earlier on today, a little bit of damage to the right rear corner of Will Hunt's car, bodywork-wise, coming under pressure from James Lay, who was the race winner earlier on. So these are the two main championship rivals. Will Hunt lost the lead of the championship earlier on, and he's going to lose out here to James Lay, who is able to squeeze his way through. So that'll be up to, 19th position now for James Lay, down to 20th for Will Hunt, and that would have been for second and third of the Radical SR1 Cup aspect of this race as well. So it looks as though not only is James Lay going to outscore his main championship rival, and also in the race earlier on took over the championship lead, he's going to outscore him again, possibly in this one. But they've got this lap and one more thereafter. Will Hunt this time diving back up the inside. Great move as he heads in towards the braking area for the loop, but he's going to be slower coming out of the corner and on towards Aintree, so that's surely going to allow James Lay back to him. They'll be running side by side down the Wellington Straight. They should appear with James Lay to camera right, which means he's got the inside line on the run in towards the braking area for Brooklands Corner. And yeah, having swapped, they've swapped back and amazingly swapped back again, and they are still, a mixture of nose to tail and side by side almost as they head up towards Luffield. Will Hunt has seen that the door is open again, and he's going to go back through again and retake the place. So what's that, 4 times on this lap? The positions for second and third in the Radical SR1 Cup have changed, and all this is playing beautifully into the hands of the black and red car, in the hands of Mackenzie Walker, who leads the class at this stage. Fantastic stuff from the Radical SR1 Cup. Now, for Mackenzie Walker, he has not had a win so far this year. He's only had one podium, and that was a third position at Snetterton at round 6 of the championship, so he'll be desperate to try and hang on to the win, as will number 44, Matt Bell, who is heading up towards the checkered flag and claims another win. So for Matt Bell, that is now win number 7 of the season for Matt Bell, who further strengthens his lead in the championship. Jerome de Sadlier finishes in 2nd place. Number 52, Mark Richards, finishing in 3rd position. And we are still side by side as we head up towards Stowe Corner. I mean, hats off to these guys. They have been nose to tail. They have been, well, you can't really say bumper to bumper in a Radical. They have been wheel to wheel, and there's not been, I don't think, a single bit of contact between the pair of them. Yes, there's a little bit of damage to the side of Will Hunt's car, but I think that was probably from race number 1. That's a spin for Drew Stern, I'm afraid. He is slap bang in the middle of Village at the moment, but should get going. For the lead, or for 2nd and 3rd in the Radical SR1s, it is going the way of Will Hunt at the moment, but right with him is still James Lay. All of this will be able to be seen by Mackenzie Walker in the distance in his mirrors. He's certainly got enough of an advantage in the lead of the Radical SR1 Cup so that he should be able to claim his first victory of the season. But who's going to finish 2nd and 3rd is still very much up for debate. If James Lay gets a good run coming out of the loop, he will get in the slipstream of Will Hunt as they head down the Wellington Straight, but I think he's just too far away, to be honest. He has lost out midway through this lap, and I can't see that he's going to have another further opportunity to try and retake the lead of the SR1 Cup aspect of the race. So there goes Mackenzie Walker. Here comes Will Hunt. Still sitting in his slipstream is James Lay, who's pretty much thrown everything at it, including the kitchen sink, but I think is still going to come up just a shade short over Will Hunt. And remember, these are the two guys that ultimately are battling for the lead of the championship. So up towards the checkered flag come the Radical SR1 Cup competitors. It's Mackenzie Walker that comes through to grab his first win in the SR1 Cup of the season. Will Hunt, congratulations to him after retirement in race number 1 and losing the lead of the championship. He is back on the podium in race number 2. But what a race he had with Will Hunt, his main championship rival. Will finished 3rd in the championship last year, and we'll be hoping that he might be able to lift the championship crown this year. But those two had a brilliant race between the pair of them. There is Matt Bell. Say 7 wins now this season for Matt Bell in the Radical Challenge Championship. He has yet again outscored his main championship rival, the Swiss driver Jerome de Sadlier, who was runner-up in this series a couple of seasons ago. I think that was the year in which Dominic Jackson scooped the championship title. But for Jerome de Sadlier, it looks as though again it's just starting to elude him. He has already had 2 non-finishes as well, Jerome de Sadlier, so he really needed to outscore his championship rival here this weekend. He hasn't done in the first 2 races, but the pit stop race tomorrow is double points in reality. It's 40 points for a race win in one of the 2 sprint races we've had today. It's 80 points for the race win tomorrow as well, and there are success seconds as well which need to be taken into account come the pit stops. Let's guide you through the results then and confirm them. Matt Bell claims the win, his 7th of the season, with Jerome de Sadlier in 2nd place and Mark Richards back on the podium in 3rd position. 4th place goes away of Chris Preen with John McLeod in 5th and Jason Rishover completing the top 6. In 7th place was Dean Warrener. 8th place was the winner from race number 1 earlier on today, which was James Sweetnam. 9th place went the way of number 28 Elliot Goodman, and wrapping up the top 10 was Martin Plowman, who started off the back of the grid in 21st position. In 11th position, that's where we see Peter Tyler. 12th place is Stephen Lake. 13th position is going to be Rod Goodman. 14th place is Jaap Zalonka. And Andrew Gord finishes in 15th place, ahead of the 16th place finisher, which was Wesley Fongeli and Guillaume Grichet, who was 17th. 18th place is the first of the SR1 Cup car homes, Mackenzie Walker, with his first win of the season, from Will Hunt in 2nd place of the SR1 Cup and completing the podium for the SR1 Cup, finishing in 20th place overall, was James Lay. Wrapping up the top 21 is Daryl De Leon, who finished in 21st position. Nick Zapolsky was 22nd, Andy Lowe was 23rd, Sven Thompson 24th, Mark Williams 25th, then it was Alex Spooner from Andrew Greenland. A spin for James Hadley saw him finish in 28th place. We also saw a spin for, I think, Paul Atherton midway through that race as well. Simon Parker finished in 30th, and 31st was Drew Stern in what was another great race from the Radical Challenge Championship and the Radical SR1 Cup. We've got more racing to come from them tomorrow here at Silverstone, so do tune in for our pit stop race tomorrow. But from the Radical SR1 Cup team here at Silverstone, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.